Roads go ever on and on, down from the door where it's begun. You're late. What do you mean? Late? What do I mean? It's been 6 months since you put out an episode. The wizard is never late, Smaug. He produces content precisely when he means to. Where have you been? What have you been doing? I've been busy with wizard things. What are you talking about? You're unemployed. I say, boy, you better watch your tongue. You'll end up with a thrashing. Look, I'm not gonna argue with you. Just roll the fucking thing. Indeed, yes. Roll the thing. The Desolation of Smaug begins with Peter Jackson reprising his role as a guy eating a carrot, which technically this is a prequel and look how much skinnier he is. Which begs the question, send him fucking carrots. Anyway, in this scene, which precedes the events of the first movie, Gandalf and Thorin have a meeting at the Inn of the Prancing Pony, and it negates a lot of the information that was given to us in the first movie, but whatever, there's like 5 writers on this fucking movie. Then we rejoin Gandalf, Bilbo, and the dwarves, still on the run from Azog and his warg riders. Even though the eagles gave them a pretty good head start, the orcs have nearly caught up with them. Luckily, a werebear seems to be keeping them at bay.
There is a house
in New Orleans, and they're cold in the rising sun. I'm sorry. And then hey, Bolg shows up, even though we don't know exactly who he is. And he calls Azog back to Dol Guldur. One ring to rule them all in black speech, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it? Anyways, the dwarves seek refuge in this house that belongs to Bjorn, who's this skin-changing werebear dude. Gandalf, he tries to convince him not to kill them, and he does a really bad job of it. This incredibly tense and yet still confusingly goofy scene plays out, but it's Thorin who convinces Bjorn to help them. Bjorn's sort of like, we're good here. We speak the same language, and the language is the murder and hatred of orcs. So Bjorn mentions some shit about tombs before he sends them into Mirkwood, and Gandalf gets pretty fucking shook up about it.
The dead had been seen walking near the high fells of Rudauer.
The dead?
Is it true? Are there tombs in those mountains?
Yes. Yes, there are tombs up there.
When Angmar fell, the men of the north took his body and all that he possessed and sealed it within the high fells of Rudauer. Deep within the rock, they buried him. In a tomb so dark, it would never come to light.
This whole thing, I dig the fuck out of this. And I will cover this in the next video thoroughly, but oh, this scene is so good. Then before they go into Mirkwood, Gandalf finds some graffiti related to the Crimson King, Sauron, and he decides to leave the party and investigate the shit for himself. But before he does, Bilbo almost tells Gandalf about finding the ring.
I was going to tell you. I found something in the Goblin tunnels.
Found what? What did you find?
My courage.
Which in the books, Gandalf has his suspicions about, but he doesn't know that it's the One Ring. And Bilbo and the dwarves enter Mirkwood. Thus begins one of the most immersive bad trips I've ever seen in a movie.
Something is not right.
It's not right at all.
Stay where you are!
Oh.
I was right in the middle of a fucking reptile zoo. And somebody was giving booze to these goddamn things. It won't be long now before they tear us to shreds. Tell me about the fucking golf shoes!
I breathed an audible sigh of relief when Bilbo finally gets above the trees. Anyway, he's figured out which way to go, and then immediately is captured by a giant spider. Bilbo puts on the ring, and suddenly he can understand the spiders?
Now the blood is running. Hide is tough, but there's good juice inside.
Alright, that is kind of cool. Then he cuts the dwarves free and loses the ring! But then he finds it again, but not before he has his first "my precious" moment.
Mine.
The dwarves fight the spiders without weapons, except for Thorin, who manages to hold on to that elven sword, even though he's vehemently racist against all elves. I don't get it. Then Legolas shows up with a posse of elves. Tauriel saves Killy. Legolas has this amusing conversation with Glóin about his son.
What is this horrid creature? A goblin mutant.
That's my wee lad, Gimli.
Foreshadow much? And the dwarves are taken to the Elven Kingdom in chains. But luckily, Bilbo slipped on the ring and followed them in, all invisible and shit. Thranduil has this scene with Thorin that's incredibly reasonable.
There are gems in the mountain that I too desire. White gems of pure starlight.
I am listening.
I will let you go, if you but return what is mine.
But Thorin tells him to go fuck himself.
Do not talk to me of dragon fire.
I mean, he was there all those years ago when his grandfather was a dickhead to Thranduil. This is totally a chance for him to set a new precedent between dwarf and elf relationships, but nope, still a racist. Cool. Thranduil makes Tauriel sad when she tells him that Legolas loves her, but he won't permit her to be married to him.
I do not think you would allow your son to pledge himself to a lowly sylvan elf.
No, you are right, I would not.
Yeah, it's a whole class thing. It's it. What are you gonna do? Setting up the worst part of this movie. The love triangle. Gilly, Legolas, Tauriel. Pathos, 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 lore, lore, lore. And they should change his name to Orlando Looms. Then Bilbo quite quickly figures out how to save the dwarves, when in the book it takes months. But I get it. Durin's Day is coming and the dwarves gotta get the fuck out. While attempting to escape, Bolg and the orcs show up and kill a bunch of heavily armed elven guards, but have a distinctly difficult time killing a bunch of unarmed dwarves, who this time are literally in barrels. And this time we know they have archers because one of them shoots Keely in the fucking leg. Anyway, Tauriel saves Killy again, and she and Legolas proceed to murder their way through a bunch of orcs that pretty much guarantees the dwarves will get away. But this is Tolkien's universe, and plot armor is stronger than mithril. Meanwhile, Gandalf arrives at the tombs and discovers that the Nine have indeed returned. And so does Radagast! Yay! But only for this one scene. Aww. When the dwarves are clear of the orcs, Keely is pretty fucked up, but hides just how fucked up he is on account of not wanting to be a burden to the party, or worse, to be left behind. Even though they carried Bomber's fat ass through Mirkwood when he got all magic sleepy timed. Then Bard shows up, and Balin goes into merchant mode.
Excuse me, but you're from Lake Town, if I'm not mistaken. That barge over there, it wouldn't be available for hire by any chance.
So he convinces Bard to smuggle them into Lake Town and provide them with weapons and armor. This scene where the elves interrogate the captured orc, he talks all that shit about hitting Keely with a Morgul arrowhead to Tauriel like he fucking knows that she's got the hots for him. It's a little weird. Then he pretty much tells them that Sauron is coming back.
My master serves the One. Do you understand now, Elfling? Death is upon you.
Why Why did you do that?
Thranduil knows this story, but has Legolas just never been told? Anyway, Bard and the dwarves do not get along at all. Maybe due to a lack of communication, which feels like poorly structured conflict. Bard gets stopped at the gate by this dick called Alfred, who nearly cooks their goose and then introduces the town's master, who is pretty much just the most horrible piece of shit you could imagine.
Bollocks, sire. Ram and goat sautéed in a lovely little mushroom gravy.
Really? Fuck! I get it, we're supposed to not like him. Stop bombarding me with this disgusting imagery. So the dwarves are successfully spirited into Lake Town, and there's this whole thing about the Black Arrow and the Windlands, which is kind of a cool addition to the story that isn't in the book, but I just wish it felt more natural. In the book, it's just a black arrow that brings down Smaug, but in the movies, they make this whole thing out of this special weapon that was designed to slay dragons. When you introduce the concept of the Windlance and the specially made black arrow that's designed to kill a dragon, it takes the extraordinary nature out of what Bard contributes to the story. He becomes a Van Helsing, and not just an everyman, which is what he's meant to be. The dwarves reject Bard's weapons.
We paid you for weapons. Iron forged swords and axes.
And try to steal some of their own. Bard realizes he's heard Thorin's name before and goes to find some tapestry with the line of Durin on it. A remnant of the Second Age.
Second Age. Couldn't give it away.
Fuck off. Legolas catches up with Tauriel, who is honestly one of the biggest warmongers in this entire fucking story.
The king has never let Orcfield roam our lands, yet he would let this orc pack cross our borders and kill our prisoners.
It is not our fight.
It is our fight. If your father has his way, we will do nothing and let darkness descend.
The dwarves try and steal their own weapons from the armory, but Killy's all fucked up and alerts the guards to their presence, which begs the question, why did they let him go in the first place, when he's clearly 3 shades whiter than he's ever been? When they get caught, Thorin just tells the town's master who he really is, and promises to share in the riches of the mountain, should they help him. So they do. Which begs the question, why sneak into the town at all? Thorin gets real fucking cold on Keely and Feely, confirming that he's still a dick after all. But we do learn that they're Thorin's nephews. The 4 who get left behind get turned away from the town's master, and Bard helps them, even though Thorin pretty much told him to go fuck himself in the previous scene, suggesting that Bard's probably the only decent human being in this entire fucking story. The remnant of the party that presses on comes upon the ruins of Dale, where they're supposed to meet Gandalf, but Thorin's got a real fucking hard-on for getting to Erebor. That whole Durin's Day thing, again. Can't wait for no fucking wizard. Meanwhile, Gandalf goes to Dol Guldur and sends Radagast to tell the White Council, who didn't believe him before when he said that Sauron was back, and presented them with a Morgul blade. But maybe they'll believe the dude who's notorious for eating too many mushrooms.
Turn around and do not come back.
Gandalf walks right into what he knows is a trap. Which, why? At least bring Radagast with you. Send a fucking moth or something to warn Galadriel. If you roll 2 wizards deep, you might actually stand a chance.
Gandalf, I've been here a lifetime.
Okay, so Gandalf's fear about the 7 rings that once belonged to the Dwarf Lords had been taken by the minions of Sauron is confirmed by this scene.
They took it.
But what does it mean? Is Sauron using the power from those rings to reconstitute, to awaken the Nazgul. Tell us, we will listen. This is cool. This is the shit that really helps bring this world to life. Anyway, the dwarves reach the secret entrance and they can't figure out how to open the door, so they just... So the sun goes down and all the dwarves despair and sulk away. Bilbo is the only one who isn't completely destroyed by this. But then it turns out that the last light of Durin's day isn't the sun at all, but the moon. Then why the fuck is it worded like this?
Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole.
Which seems to suggest that the sun will shine upon the keyhole. Whatever. One of 4 fucking writers on this thing probably thought it was a clever fake out. It's not. So they get in, and all the dwarves are suddenly very solemn and misty-eyed. Then the real reason Bilbo was brought on as part of the company is revealed.
The Arkenstone.
They want him to find the Arkenstone so that Thorin can unite the 7 kingdoms of the dwarves to, I guess, reclaim Erebor? The motivations are vague, but I think secretly Gandalf's trying to get Thorin to unite the dwarven clans so that they can stand against Sauron, who he suspects is coming back. But they don't really divulge that information specifically. Anyway, Thrain explains that Smaug is in league with the One. Then Azog slams Gandalf hard enough to cave in the poor bastard's chest, and he just shakes it off.
Where is your master? Where is he?
Big Shazog.
I wanted so much more with Thrain. I have so many questions. He died to a Wilhelm scream. That's funny. Then Gandalf throws down with Sauron himself. And pretty badass. But I gotta wonder how this scene could have gone if Radagast had been there to help. I'm just saying, y'all. 2 wizards deep. Meanwhile, Bilbo sneaks into a treasure vault of unimaginable size and is supposed to find 1 fucking gem the size of a dwarf's fist that he has never fucking seen before.
You'll know it when you see it.
Right.
But in doing so, uncovers Smaug, who wakes up feeling a little playful. So Bilbo puts on the ring. Whoop!
Well, thief. Don't be shy. Something you carry. Something made of gold, but far more precious.
The word precious is what forces Bilbo to take off the ring, which is some weird dramatic irony that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Bilbo just happens to spy the Arkenstone during his conversation with Smaug, who seems to know the purpose of Bilbo's intrusion.
Did you think I did not know this day would come? That a pack of canting dwarves would come crawling back to the mountain?
Back in Lake Town, Bard reveals that he has a black arrow and implies that he's going to kill Smaug.
Not if I kill it first.
But he has to get to the Windlands to do so. But the guards are after Bard right now because of reasons.
You're under arrest. On what charge? Any charge the master chooses.
Just because, I guess. That's cool. Back in Dol Guldur. Why doesn't Sauron just kill Gandalf? Oh, right, because he's in Lord of the Rings. Saruman doesn't kill him in Fellowship because he's trying to convince him to join his side, but surely Sauron would recognize the enemy of his master Melkor and seek to destroy the meddling wizard. But no, whatever. Smaug decides he's done talking and tries to eat Bilbo, who may or may not have grabbed the Arkenstone after he slipped on the ring. Bard wakes up in jail. Bolg's orc pack spies Balfur and follows him back to Bard's place. And despite them all being unarmed, no one gets killed. Then Tauriel shows up and has way too much fun killing a bunch of orcs. Bolg, being the wise captain that he is, calls for a retreat. Legolas wants to track the orcs and kill them all, but Tauriel decides she's gonna stay and save Kili. Bilbo runs into Thorin, who's only concerned about the Arkenstone. Bilbo, who definitely has the Arkenstone, tells Thorin he doesn't. And for a second, it looks like Thorin might fucking kill him, until Smaug shows up. Kili is having a really bad day, and Tauriel saves him with a handful of Ethelas, just like Arwen saves Frodo in the Fellowship, except she doesn't. It's Aragorn who uses Ethelas to try and save Frodo, and Arwen who rushes him to Elrond in Rivendell, who saves the Hobbit with his dope-ass elven healing magic. So, is Tauriel secretly a super powerful magical healer in addition to being a badass warrior? Can she use the Force too? Back at Erebor, the dwarves are playing hide and seek with Smaug. Seriously, Smaug can smell the dwarves on Bilbo's clothes, but he can't smell them directly beneath him. Someone cast Pass Without a Trace? And Thorin decides that they're gonna kill Smaug.
If this is to end in fire, then we will all burn together.
Bolg has a showdown with Legolas, which is fun, but genuinely unsatisfying. Really only happens to set up the second showdown in the last movie, which is also pretty unsatisfying.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
Now, I'd be lying if I said I didn't secretly sort of enjoy this Scooby-Doo ass shit, but the whole thing winds its way around to a pretty unsatisfying end. How is molten gold supposed to kill a dragon exactly? It's hot, you can breathe fire. Obviously it doesn't work. Smaug hauls ass into the night towards Lake Town, and Bilbo asks a question Peter Jackson surely asked himself when the final cut of this movie was handed over to the distributors.
What have we done?
Things I liked. The first act of this movie is pretty fucking great, but as soon as Legolas' stupid pointy fucking ears show up, it turns into a goddamn mess. The scene with Bjorn is kind of toned down a little, as in the book, when we find him, he's just finished putting a bunch of orcs' heads on spikes, but it's pretty fucking spot on in most other respects. The scenes in Mirkwood are pretty outstanding. The delirium the characters experience, the water is clearly cursed, even the spiders. It's all very true to the book, but all that changes upon the arrival of Orlando Looms over here. The history about the Witch King's tomb is a pretty badass piece of Tolkien lore that works to flesh out the history of one of the most powerful and interesting minions of Sauron. I honestly wish that they had taken a little more time with this, even though it's not really important to the story of The Hobbit, which is kind of a testament to how many issues I have with this movie. I actively wish that they expounded upon superfluous lore over, let's say, the poorly fleshed out love triangle, perhaps. And I think I finally understand the whole Durin's Day thing. It's all about urgency, which helps push the characters towards their goals, when in the book things sort of stagnate. Thinking specifically about how much time they spend in Mirkwood. It's a good plot device. I'm a little sad I maligned it simply because it's not a part of the book. It's a good tool and it's good writing. Let's talk about some stuff I could have done without. The first scene pretty much does some revisionist shit with the story.
What brings Thorin Oakenshield to Bree?
I received word that my father had been seen wandering the wilds near Dunland.
It's been a long time since anything but rumor was heard of Thran.
He still lives. I am sure of it. What did you say to him?
I urged him to march upon Erebor, and I would say the same to you. You are the heir to the throne of Durin. Summon a meeting of the seven dwarf families. Demand they stand by their oath.
The seven armies swore that oath to the one who wields the king's jewel.
What if I were to help you reclaim it?
And I disapprove. Also, they really double down on the whole dwarves are Jews thing. The dwarvish curse that Thorin drops on Thranduil.
I told him he could go Ishkakve on Dognol.
Sounds like Yiddish, for fuck's sake. It's like the 13 dwarves are reduced to Disney-esque portrayals of Jewish stereotypes. This one's greedy, that one's chatty, this one's surly, this one's broody, blamey, drinky, dummy, steely, fatty. You get the idea. Okay, now we're gonna talk about stuff that I would have changed and is honestly a lot. So here we go. The whole antagonist swap is done very hand-fisted. So much to the point that I can't honestly put my finger on who the antagonist is in this story. I mentioned this in my review of An Unexpected Journey. If Azog is killed in the final showdown by Bilbo, it might actually make sense for Bolg to enter the story the way he does. In the book, Bolg is referenced as the spawn of Azog, and whatever else that means, it suggests that there is some kind of familial tie between these two horrible creatures. So, if Bilbo had killed Azog in the first movie, it would give a reason for Bolg to hate dwarves, or fuck it, you don't even need to have Azog die. If it's so fucking important for you to keep him around, have Bilbo mortally wound him, the way Thorin did in the Battle of Azanul Bazaar. I mean, the Battle of Moria. That way, he's out of the picture for this movie, and maybe while he's laid up at Dol Guldur, he can tell his buddy Bolg that the dwarves did this to him because, you know, there's no goddamn way he's gonna admit that a hobbit did it to him. And Bolg can be all like, I will avenge you, daddy, or however the fuck Spawn of links you on the family tree. That way, Azog can still come back in the last movie if you really need to have it. Second thing I would have changed is this whole stupid love triangle between Kili, Tauriel, and Legolas. Since Tauriel isn't actually a character in any of the books, how about we do something interesting with her? How about we make her Thranduil's wife? Juicier now, isn't it? There isn't a whole lot of information in Tolkien's writing about Legolas's mother, so since we're already taking some serious liberties with both characters that exist in the literature and those that don't, let's have some fucking fun with it. If Tauriel is Legolas's mother and Thranduil's wife, you have a much more compelling source of conflict. You introduce Tauriel the same way, and while we're at it, maybe her attraction to Kili could be born out of his courage as a fighter instead of just the fact that he's tall for a dwarf. So instead of having her save him while some shit is going down in the fight, Legolas is too busy to come save her, calls out, "Mommy!" And Kili, being a mama's boy himself, puts himself in harm's way to protect Tauriel, and then have Legolas swoop in and save them both. Next, reveal that she's the leader of this expedition. Maybe even suggest that Legolas is a badass on account of his mother's influence and not his father's. Cause you know, Thranduil throws down in the next movie, but in this movie, he's one of the many villains lining up to be the antagonist. And it paints the elf prince as more of a villain himself, which is confusing to the viewer considering he's anything but a fucking villain in The Lord of the Rings. This change also paints Legolas as a protective son instead of a jealous sad boy who feels like he got friend-zoned. This scene where Thranduil talks to Tauriel about how she can't marry Legolas can instead be a quarrel between a couple who have fallen out of love with each other over the centuries that they have been together. Maybe he disapproves of the way she conducts herself as a queen, and she can be all, "Fuck you, you bougie ass bitch. Someone needs to show our son how to be a fucking man." You should also show Thorin observing his nephew's interest in the Elven Queen, which could explain later why Thorin doesn't care about Kili's injury and forces him to stay behind in Lake Town while he and the rest of them go to Erebor. Tauriel can still take Legolas with her when she pursues the dwarves, but maybe when Legolas finds out why she's really doing it, he can storm off in a fog of rage. And maybe that's why he gets his shit pushed in by Bolg, because he's now fighting through a fog of rage and not thinking clearly. Then maybe he goes crying back to Daddy, tells him that Tauriel is in love with a dwarf, one from the line of Durin no less. Then Thranduil can fly into a rage, summon his army to march on Erebor, dragon or no fucking dragon, and put a stop to this shit real fucking quick. But hey, all this shit, man, that's just my opinion.
Hey, thank you so much for watching YouTube. If you like The Hobbit, you should stay tuned, cause I'm gonna review one more movie, and this one's gonna be a doozy. The Clearing the Queue theme song and a lot of the original music used in this episode was written and recorded by my good friend Chuck Miller, and you can find a link to his SoundCloud in the information below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and stick around, cause I'm gonna review more stuff. If you think you can stop me, you better have a magic ring or a wizard or